Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World. Welcome to Friday night South Wales Derby preview. City versus the Jacks. Let's talk about it. It is the 119th South Wales Derby. Nearly here. And it's going to be an interesting one. Hasn't been a favourable fixture for the Bluebirds in recent years. Although the most recent one this season, Cardiff showed a bit of fight, as they have probably in the last few games. They've shown a bit of character, if not lacking a little bit of quality. Swansea's season has been probably equally inconsistent, but they've obviously doing slightly better on the points front, shall we say. But there's a lot on it. Look, there's obvious frustration from the Cardiff City fan base. There's protests going on before the game. And look, I see a lot of people criticising people for doing it and it's not the right game. And like, I fully understand that, but I would never criticise people for voicing their frustrations in the correct way, in the right way. And as long as it's done in the right way, cheers, bud. But I also think, and everyone who I've spoken to or everyone who I've seen who is going to the protest, is the plan is that they march, they protest, they make their feelings known, and then as soon as they get in the game, all they're interested in is supporting the team. Personally, I don't think anyone should be criticised either way, whether they want to do it or they don't want to do it. It's entirely, I understand both points of view. I'm extremely frustrated with the owner myself and the way the football club is run. So it's one of them. But let's talk about the actual football in it. Why not? When you look at the previous 5 results between the sides, it doesn't make for pretty reading for Cardiff City. Going back to October 2022, Cardiff lost 2-0 at Swansea. They then lost in the April of 2023, 3-2 to Swansea at home. We then beat Swansea last year comfortably, may I add, 2-0 in September of 2023. And that game's an interesting one for me because that September 23 game where we won 2-0, where obviously Tanner scores and then you get the Ramsey penalty, was the most stress-free South Wales derby I can remember being a part of, certainly in recent years. Like, there was at no point did I think Swansea were getting back into that game. They created little. We dominated possession. We dominated everything else. So I'd like to see one of them tomorrow, And then obviously last year, in March 2024, August 2024. So you had March 2024 where we travelled up to their place. They beat us 2-0. And it was one of the most gutless, worst performances I've seen from a Cardiff City team in recent memory, for sure. And then obviously earlier this season in August, early season derby, it was a 1-1 draw. Callum Robinson getting the equaliser. And again, as I sort of alluded to earlier, Cardiff showed a bit of character and a bit of fight to get back into that game. And someone who's been probably criticised recently, Ruben Colwell, for not being up to the standards he set earlier in the season, made a big difference that day. Him, Tanner, Robinson really had an impact on that game. And obviously we'll get to the team and stuff like that in a bit. But it's an interesting one because we've been all right recently. So what do you go with? Do you want to make any more noise? My cats are fighting. I apologise. And my neighbour's got music on, so I apologise if you can hear that as well. Out of my control. But yeah, if you've got any questions and all that sort of stuff, I just figured, why not do the preview live? It's a nerve-wracking day to say the least. Callum Robinson is the Bluebirds' top scorer this season with 8 goals in the league. He's already netted against Swansea this season as well. But Cian Ashford has impressed recently. I think he scored 3 and 3 or 3 and 4. Sheffield United in the FA Cup, scored against Watford. So yeah, he's been banging form, and it's been his attitude and work rate off the ball, which has been really interesting to watch and see, because that's what you kind of expect, and that's what you believe academy players will bring you. But he's not only brought that mentality and that work rate and that work ethic to it, he's also been very much quality on the ball. He's been really quality. That finish in the Sheffield United game was a real good finish, because sometimes those ones when you're 1-on-1 with a keeper and you've got a lot of kind of time, you could overthink it. And he was so composed to finish. And again, against Watford, real good instinctive finish. And he had an assist in the one game the other week where it comes through and the temptation is to go for goal, and he lays it across. I think, was it Robertson for the goal? I might be mistaken with that. But my point being, the composure in front of goal and the quality he's shown has been equally good as the attitude and the work rate that he's shown. And I think it would be a huge shock if Cian Ashford doesn't start tomorrow. Well, very much so. In terms of the Jack side, Liam Cullen's also scored 8 goals this season in the Championship. Welsh international, Swans top scorer. He scored their goal in the most recent game, 1-1 draw. In the most recent game between us, in a 1-1 draw. And also Matt Grimes continues to impress in that midfield. The Swans captain has retained a 91% passing accuracy in all 26 games of the season so far, so which is obviously a very good record, and we should all be very impressed. But look, Swansea are by no means flying. They've got some injuries. They're doing all right. They're safe. Probably not going to be in the playoff mix, I don't think. But also they're not going to be in the relegation mix. Overall, I think the manager's done a decent job. I know some Swans fans who are mates and that, they're not completely convinced by him. But I think there's a lot to be said for having someone who cares about your club as a manager, and I think he tries to play football in a decent way. It's about as much as I can give, I'm afraid. No, they're having an all right season. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where they go and whatnot, and injuries. I don't believe for a second, for instance, that Harry Darling's out. I know there's been claims they're sweating over the fitness of Kabanga and Harry Darling. Wouldn't believe a word of it. Now, I'm not saying they're not injured, not saying they're not got a knock, but you can't, as a football team, like the club, the team, the manager, the coach, they can't focus on that. They've got to just focus on their own stuff. Ollie Cooper's out. Christian Pedersen is out. And then you, like I say, sweating over the fitness of Cabango and Harry Darling. Darling's an absolute. He's just so ridiculously overrated as a footballer for me. But for some reason, the Sky and the BBC, they all seem to love this kind of player. But he's very much for the cameras for me. He's tries these little things off the ball to get people sent off. But it'll be interesting whether he does play, because I think he does help their defence in terms of the organisation. But I actually think Cabango is a way better player. And I know some people don't, but I actually rate Cabango. I actually think he's a real good defender, and I think he'll be a stalwart for Wales going forward. But it's always the midfield which wins these games, which is encouraging in that Cardiff's midfield has looked a lot better in recent times. The one for me, which always seems to cause us a bit of trouble, is Franco. I think he's a really talented footballer, unfortunately. So I think they'll go something like with Vigouroux up front. You'll have Key, let's say Darling's out, so you go Key, Christie, Norton, Timon, and then you'll have Grimes, Franco, Ronald, Pearl Harris, Eom, and Cullen. That would be my guess. For me, I think a big miss for them is Cooper, obviously. He's a big part of what they try and do and their possession of football. But to me, like, I still think that that Franco's the one. If you can keep Franco relatively quiet, then I think that gives us a good chance in that midfield area. So, yeah, Vigouroux in goals, as I say. But look, Cardiff have got to. When I say this, I feel like I say this every single preview, right? Home games, start fast, start aggressive, get the bloody crowd behind you, because it won't take much for the crowd to get fired up tomorrow for a variety of reasons. The main one being it's the South Wales derby. So it's my opinion, don't take the sting out of the game by keeping possession of the ball, because you're letting the away team settle. Don't let Swansea settle. And it's one thing that they do very well when we play up their place. They don't give us a second. They don't let players settle. They just go and then kind of get into it as they're going. Like I've seen, a load of people's different teams going around. And look, I will say one thing with regards to the Cardiff team, right? In my opinion, and I know some people will disagree and some people won't like this either. Some people will really hate my team, by the way, but that's another thing. The thing for me, Perry NG has to earn his way back into the starting 11. Don't think he should have started the last game. I understand him starting in the FA Cup to get minutes and that, but he was very poor when he came on against Coventry. He was very poor in the FA Cup, and he was very poor against Watford, in my opinion. You could also argue that not the only one, but he's among the players at fault for the goal. Completely switches off again at the back post, and there's a free man. But on the other side of that, regardless of his form, and you could obviously point to his historically him being a strong right back, at certain points being one of the best right backs in the league. Of course, you can point to that historically, but his form is bad, and it's been bad for a while. On the other side of that, Rinamoto has been excellent at right back, and as his way of doing that role and kind of sitting in a little bit has allowed the other side, Callum O'Dowda, to fly up that wing and still hold that 3 with a Chambers in front of them. So for me, it's a no-brainer. Rinamoto has to start on that right-hand side. Just my opinion. But I feel like if Kepakia was there, I would want Rinamoto and Kepakia. They should be in the pecking order for that right-back position ahead of NG at the moment, based on form and whatever. But I will also say, if I'm Will Fish and I haven't had a chance, and then I finally get my chance in the FA Cup, I do really well in a partnership with Darland, and then I see NG just come back straight back into the starting 11 in poor form, I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit, because he can play right back, he can play centre back. So I think that's something that should be considered also. Not saying, like, I'm not hating on Perry NG, just think he's in a bit of poor form and he needs to get it all sorted, So in terms of Cardiff's team, this is how I would line up, and then I'll tell you how I think Omar Rhys will line up. And by the way, sincere condolences to Omar Rhys and his family. What a dreadful loss to lose his father at any time, but obviously in a week where there's so much pressure and stress around, it's just another thing. But football aside, and ultimately, when it comes down to it, some things are much more important. However, sincere condolences for him, and wouldn't it be great if the team could rally around him, if the team could put in a phenomenal performance to sort of, galvanize and get around him. That would be great, because I think the players, certainly some players, I think they owe Omar Rhys that, to be honest with you. But, as I say, that's another thing. So this is how I would line up Cardiff City. I'd go Ethan Howarth in goal. No, I'm joking. I'd go Alnwick in goal, O'Dowda left back, Darland and Gutas centre backs, right back. I'm going Rinamoto. Back 4, back 5. I think picks itself. And then the midfield is where it gets interesting. So let me tell you my kind of thinking with it, first of all. Number one, Alex Robertson's one of the first names on my team sheet. So then you have a decision to make. Is he going to play in central midfield? Is he going to play in the 10, where he's done a real good job from a defensive point of view in pressing, in getting on that deep lying midfielder and stopping them playing? So you've got that element of it. But a derby, I think you have to 100%. Siopis has to play if he's fit. He has to play. You need his energy and his aggression and his general attitude to getting in people's faces. So he is also essential. Callum Chambers has been essential to Cardiff's improvement in recent weeks, the back end of Christmas, in sitting in front of a defence. He's also been essential in that sitting role in allowing Siopis' form to improve. So straight away, you've got three midfielders. I also believe that Ruben Colwell should start this game. I think Swansea defenders don't like playing against him. He always seems to do relatively well. They still seem to struggle with his ball carrying ability, but 4 doesn't go into 3. So for me, I'm going Chambers and Siopis, and then I'm going Alex Robertson in the 10. And he's going to be the one who's going to sit on the deepest midfielder. He's going to press. He's going to give them all kinds of problems. But he also doesn't fill up those little pockets of space like Ruben does, which is very hard to mark from an attacking sense. But I'll get to that in a second, because what he does do is he knits everything together really nicely. Very rarely gives the ball away. Technically excellent, and if you do give him room to shoot, he has got a shot on him. So I like it. It's fine. Right hand side is Kean Ashford, no doubt. Up front, I think you have to go Callum Robinson. Cardiff City have been most effective as a unit, as a team, when Callum Robinson is up front. So you need him, and you need his ability to run in behind. Swansea generally play quite a high line, and I think they will look to be quite aggressive in their pressing and the way they normally play a derby. So Callum Robinson will cause them issues if they are aggressive and their defenders jump to try and get in front of Alex Robertson, get in front of Robinson. If those defenders try and jump to intercept balls, that's when you need good players in the pockets and Callum Robinson getting in behind. So he's starting for me. And then you've got the left wing. So for me, you've got these options. You can go Ollie Tanner for the pace. You can go Chris Willock for the pockets of space, etc. Or do you go with what they did with Ruben early on in the season, where they kind of were planning to play him as a false winger, if you like, where he'd be off the left for the shape and the press and defensive element. But as soon as we get the ball, he's got free run to go wherever he wants, to get on the ball and try and make things happen. In my opinion, for this game and the way we're setting up with Rhys, with the 2 defensive midfielders, with Robertson in the 10, but he takes up different positions to Ruben in the 10, and he's more of a knit it all together type 10 rather than a 10 who's going to play just off the striker and kind of find those pockets of space, which are, they're really difficult to pick up for the midfield and defense of the opposition. I'm not 100% convinced by Willock yet. I've seen more from him, but I'm not sure. So for me, it's between Tanner and Colwell, because we've got that balance with O'Dowda and Rhys fulfilling 2 different roles at fullback, and because Swansea have got a few injuries at the back and in their defensive areas, I'm going to go with Ruben on the left and literally give him free rein to pick up those pockets of space, because I really believe Swansea do not like playing him. They can't deal with his physicality. They can't deal with his ball carrying, and he's got an eye for a pass. And say what you will about Ruben, people say that he should work harder or this or that. I don't necessarily get on board with the work harder thing, because I think he works as hard as anyone. And his when you look at the stats, he is actually the the highest player in the squad for attacking players winning the ball back. And I think that the shape of the team and the balance of the midfield allows him to come off the left and just have free reign. And I think it could cause some real problems. Callum Robinson likes to take up that left channel in behind. Robertson, like I said, knits it all together. So there's a spaces for Ruben to attack. And by Ruben drifting, that creates the space for Callum O'Dowda to really create the width on that left-hand side. That's my opinion. My opinion of what we should do, should I say. What I think Omar Rhys will do is I think he will go with Robinson up front. I think he sticks with Robertson. I'd be amazed if Kean Ashford doesn't start. And I think he goes with Willock on the left. I understand it, but for me, Ruben offers more all around, particularly in this fixture. And I agree with what Martin said there. He says Colwell frightens him. He needs to be more confident. He seems inhibited. Yeah, but do you know what it is, mate? Is I think he's been told he's greedy so much and he holds onto the ball so much that sometimes when he gets, I think it was the cup game where he was like one-on-one, quite deep. You know, he wasn't one-on-one, but he was one-on-one with one defender versus him. And you're just thinking, drive, you've got him. Like, just go round him and you'll do him for strength and speed. And he kind of held it, and he held onto the ball. And too often, I see him break into a good place, and then he'll turn and retain possession. Well, I don't necessarily need to see my number 10 or my winger or my striker retain possession. They have to take risks to be able to create chances. The other thing about him is overall as a team, we look much more likely to score goals from open play when Ruben Colwell's in the side. Now, I agree, he's not a striker. I think the false nine in a system, I think that can work. For it to work, though, you have to have two people running beyond, sort of behind him. And I don't think we're set up for that in the way we set up now in the 3-4-2-1. That was more set up for it if you put like Tanner and Ashford behind him. So he's dropping in and they're running beyond. But in the current system that we're playing, yeah. And I just think I would love to see a Colwell, Ashford, Robertson combination behind Robinson tomorrow. Like three young, energetic players who can all score goals, all create. And I think... I just think that those three behind a Robinson running in behind could be really dangerous. Colwell does also play better with Tanner, which is the issue. What I will say, like Rhys says there, Ruben is a 10, and sadly, he looks well behind Robertson. His reading of the game is just too far ahead of Ruben. Yeah, I mean, Alex Robertson is a phenomenal player. But I said from the moment we signed him that we should just enjoy having him, because he won't be at Cardiff for very long. He's young, he's technically gifted, energetic, aggressive. He's just really just needs to add some more goals to his game, and he's like a complete midfielder. And he can play. Robertson could literally be a 6, an 8, or a 10. He's exceptional. I actually think he's better being deeper, Robertson. But I understand why they're playing him in the 10. It makes a lot of sense because he does such a good job with the press, and particularly when Robinson's in there. And he does a good job on the opposition's deep midfielders. And then you're looking at the bench. And I think, like I said, so my team, like I said, would be O'Dowda, Rinomota, Darland and Gutas, Psyopis Chambers, Robertson in the 10, Colwell off the left, been a free roll, and then Ashford on the right. And then from the bench side of things, you've got Tanner, gives you pace. You've got the new lad, Salic, which I've got no doubt will come on at some point, give him his debut. South Wales derby, going to be feisty. All he needs is a goal, I think, for a striker. If you can just get a goal, nick a goal on your debut in a derby, you're off to the races, and then everything else will kind of be a lot easier because you've got that thing off your back, like the you've got that early goal, so you haven't got that pressure, and it just make everything easier. Might see Matey. I would like to see Luke Pearce on the bench again. I think he gives a lot of energy. He can play wide. He can play through the middle as well, but he gives a lot of energy in a press. And I want to see attacking options on the bench. At the end of the day, right, you got Will Fish, who can play all across the back four, really. I left back, probably not, but he can play right back and he can play centre back. I'd be quite happy to see Fish and Bagan being our only kind of defensive options. Bagan can play centre back and play left back. Fish can play right back and centre back. Bagan can also play in the midfield. Rawls is going to be in there then. That's 3. And then you can kind of add who you want from an attacking point of view. So you're going to have Willock in there. You're going to have Salic in there. You're going to have Tanner in there. I would like to see Pearce. And don't get me wrong, like I'd be absolutely, I'd be very shocked that Perry NG doesn't make this. If Perry NG didn't make the squad and he was fit. And I don't want it to be like I'm like slagging him off, but I just think he's got to earn it. And for this game, he doesn't get in my starting 11. And then I think you've got to then look at the best way to set up your bench to change the game. And it is a tricky one because he's an experienced player. He's got that bit of shithousery about him. And on his best day, he's an excellent, excellent fullback. So the bench against Watford was Bagan, Atete, Fish, Halworth, Kanga, Matey, Luke Pearce, Rawls, and Tanner. So obviously, Siopis is going to come back in. I would imagine that it's probably Pearce who drops out, if I'm being honest. I think, obviously, Salic will come in for Kanga, and Siopis comes into the squad for Pearce. And then I think it'll be the same bench, or like the same squad of 25, should I say. But I would not be against having Luke Pearce on the bench for a bit of energy. I do wonder whether we set up in that 3-4-3 system. I don't think it's the right time, It's an interesting one. I know, some people really like Matey, and I think it'll be interesting. So if Robinson gets tired and we need someone to hold the ball up because he hasn't played for a bit, or if we need a goal, if Rhys turns to the new side in Salic, or he turns to Matey. And I think if he turns to the new side in, that kind of indicates to you that where the pecking order is. And obviously you might have an Atete on there as well. So it'd be interesting what kind of order. You've just got to start fast. I agree with you. Ethan says Matey's hold-up play is unreal. It is, mate, but my thing with Matey is his hold-up play is good. The rest of his game is not. He can't beat a man. His finishing is dire. And unfortunately, that lets him down. His attitude, I think, is a bit hit and miss. So some games he looks like he's bang up for it, and then other games he looks like he can't be asked. So it's one of them for me. I definitely wouldn't be starting Matey. I would start with Callum Robinson because just as a team, we look better with a mobile striker who can run in behind. And obviously, we have no real idea of what Salic is like. From what I've read and seen of clips and people's opinion from fans of the Swedish club is he does like to make little runs in behind, and he seems like very much like a poacher. Like a lot of his goals, Matey should have got sent off the last time he played Swansea. In fact, Robinson absolutely has to start without question. The only way I'd be accepting of Callum Robinson not starting is if he thinks that Salic is so good that he has to start after one training session. That's the only way I'd be comfortable with Callum Robinson not starting. And I say that as someone who thinks that Ruben should absolutely start this game because the Swansea won't want him to start. but I'd be disappointed if Ruben was to start up front again. He's not a striker. He could play as a false nine, but you've got to have runners. That's a bit of a shout. Ethan said, I'd love to see Robinson and Salic. Yeah. How would you feel if Omar Rhys came up with a new system again and went 4-4-2? Salic and Robinson up front, Tanner on the left, Ashford on the right, and like Chambers and Robertson in the middle of midfield as a two. Like, how would you feel about that? 4-4-2. Go on. It's interesting. The reason I said about Ruben on the left is twofold. One, there was a plan at the start of the season to give him a free roll off the left, and I do like it if you've got O'Dowda behind him to create the width. And two, in my opinion, Swansea will not want Ruben Colwill to start. So that's my thinking behind it. Alex says there's no way that Salic flops like Kanga. It's tricky, isn't it? Tricky. We always look better as well when Robinson runs in behind. Like, Robinson's pretty good at dropping in the sort of pockets and linking up play. But I always think the team looks better when he looks to get down that left-hand channel and get in behind. He's a good finisher. He's probably the best finisher at the club. Has been for a while. And him going in behind creates space for a Ruben, a Robertson, people like this. Robinson's got to make sure he doesn't get sent off. Make sure that all of them have got to make sure that they keep their heads. And that's the thing, like, you need a bit of shithousery, like what Perry NG sometimes brings, where you winding players up. That's what Darling brings for them as well. And you wind players up, and Mayte fell for it in that game last year. But you can't get like too distracted by that. Like, you know, I think you've got to be clever. John Watkins says 4-4-2 is interesting. Most successful City teams who had a strike partnership could be the way to go. The problem is, mate, I think, is when you play a 4-4-2 in modern football, it's quite easy to overload the centre of midfield if you're playing against it, because most teams will play like 4-2-3-1 and the 10 just drops in to create an overload. But a lot of teams, fullbacks invert into central midfield now as well. So you can almost end up with 4 in the midfield with the fullback, the holding midfielder, the number 8 and the number 10. And suddenly you've got a 4 against 2. That's my only sort of issue, especially in a derby where the midfield is so important to those games. And Swansea create a lot of overloads in the central areas. So, yeah, whilst I don't hate the idea of a 4-4-2 for certain games, I don't think this is the game for that. And like people who, you know, regular viewers will know, I really like the 3-4-2-1. I just think we didn't get the right personnel in it, or like the right people in the right position to make it work properly, like proper click. But I like the way he set up the last few games. He's basically told Chambers to sit in front of the defence. Chambers is good on the ball as well. And I think it's allowed Siopis to be that headless chicken who just chases everything without completely evacuating the midfield and exposing the defence. So they work quite well as a duo. And Siopis will set the tone tomorrow. I'd be amazed if he doesn't start. I really would. I think he sets the tone in terms of aggression and work rate. And then you need players to follow him. You need players they've all got to have that attitude, and we have to start fast. And that's where, again, like Rhys just says there, Swansea overload their midfield. The game is won and lost there. We need a 5-man from midfield to try and dominate the ball. And that is where, so you've got Renamote who will tuck in, and you've got, if Ruben's on the left, will tuck in. So you're kind of, whilst those two things allow you to be attacking, they also allow you to make sure you've got plenty of bodies in the central areas. And Chambers and Siopis will also cover if O'Dowd is bombing up the left and the play breaks down or you want to break. I do like the partnership. I think it's really got the best out of Cyprus. Salic, if he does get on, we've just got to get the ball into him. He's going to play between the posts. He's going to stick in that 18-yard box. So you've got to put it in there. Whether that's crosses, whether that's balls in behind, you've got to get the ball into him. He's a big, big boy. And by all accounts, he looks like he's got a decent touch. But you've got to play to his strengths. Like if we start knocking the ball into his feet, 40 yards from goal, trying to play off him, keep possession of the ball, I think you're just building him up for failure. Got to play to these players' strengths. I said the other day that if Salic can be a bit of a poacher and be capable of holding it up and winning headers and flick-ons and, the occasional run in behind, apparently he's quite quick for a big lad as well. So, if he can do that, I think you'll see a better version of Willock, Colwell, Robertson. Obviously Tanner and O'Dowd, they'll get putting crosses in. But those central those players who like to pick up the pockets, they have been crying out for that. Someone who's like a big, strong presence in the front of them who can score goals. Whereas Robinson is a different one where he runs in behind, he creates the space that way. I just hope he doesn't drop too deep, Robinson. Jaden says Salic starts. It would be interesting if Kabanga and Darlin are out, which I don't necessarily believe, but if they are out, they're going to have, a different defense. So I could see it's a lot of pressure for one training session, and I doubt he even did a full training session this morning either. Be a big ask, wouldn't it? And the other thing is the Swedish season's an off season as well, so I'm not even sure if he's got, if he's match fit. I would like to think he is, but he hasn't played since November. You just unless you're planning to start him and just give him a half, but that seems counteractive. To me, you'd be better off playing Robinson through the middle, because Robinson hasn't played for 3 or 4 games either, and then give Salic half hour, 20 minutes towards the end against a tired defence. Yeah, in the cup game they played Christie and Norton. You're right there, Jonathan. I don't think either one is particularly great. I think Christie's slightly better than Norton, but Norton who's really struggled with Ruben when he came on. One of the fullbacks when Ruben came on in the last game really just could not get near him. They just couldn't get a grip of him, and he created chances. I think it's a very winnable game, but I think so much will depend on how we start. My fear, as is all home games, is that we start with this possession football. We try and take the sting out of games. Perfect for away. Home games, no. I don't want to take the sting out of the game. I need to get this sort of mismatched defensive unit of Swansea's with injuries and don't let them settle. Get them under pressure, put a tackle in or two. It's going to be feisty. So why would you want to take the sting out of that early doors? Get the crowd loud and hostile. Swansea have only won twice in the last 6 games. So it's important that we, I hope that they don't give the Swansea team too much respect because of what's happened in the previous fixtures, because it's not a strong Swansea team by any semblance of the imagination. And it's how you test them. For me, you test them by starting fast, aggressive, putting crosses in the box, getting in behind them, get Robinson running the channels. And, if Ruben was to start off the left, if I'm Ruben, go and have a wander, right across to the right hand side pocket. See if that fullback follows you, because if he doesn't, he's got to pass you on to the centre-back, to the centre midfielder, and that's when confusion happens. But I know like that plan for him to float off the left, he was going to get like free reign to just literally, go wherever. Obviously didn't pan out. And I think part of that was because Bullet abandoned the shape and everything they worked on in pre-season. He abandoned it by halftime in the first game of the season. So, it is what it is. And this is the problem, isn't it? Like, Salic has obviously been training for 6 weeks, and he hasn't played a game since November, and it's a big ask to start a derby when you've not played football. But he's young; he's going to be up for it, and maybe in some ways, we've been all saying we want to see the youngsters thrown in. Well, if we're willing to throw the youngsters, throw them in. Should we be willing to throw in a new signing striker up front? But that aside, Callum Robinson, we play better with him. Could you see a world where we started Salic up front and Callum Robinson plays off the left? It's interesting because all of a sudden, we do seem to have options. Isaac Davis is going to be back soon. Atete's just come back. And that's what we need, is we need attacking options off the bench. And in the team, we need to be able to change games, because ultimately we must win football matches between now and the end of the season, or we're in big trouble. The only way you win football matches is by scoring goals. So having options is essential. I think it was Ethan. He asked, "Who do I think is going to be sold?" I can't find the question, mate. If you want to ask it again, I will. I can't remember what the question was, if it was who I would sell or who I think is going to be sold. Ask it again and I'll do it. So I don't agree with that, Sloper Road Bruise. I don't necessarily think Atete's crap. What I think is with Atete, I think Atete is a very technically sound footballer. I think he's really got all the ability. What I think he needed was at the start of this season was to go out on loan to League One, get battered about a bit, score some goals, play week in, week out, and toughen up, because I think he's too he's not strong enough on the ball, and he's not strong enough mentally. Absolutely very, very disappointed to see Tom Davis leaving for Newport today. Rhys says Tom Davis leaving today to Newport was strange. He's out of contract in the summer. We gave him a new 1 year deal to let him go for free. My only hope, mate, is that one, we've got like a 50% sell-on clause, and two, we've got either first refusal or a set amount that we can pay to sign him back. Because I think he's going to be an excellent player. I think he's probably a future Wales international, and I don't understand it. Particularly when you've got so many experienced players out of contract. Why are we selling? And bear in mind, Tom has kept Louis Giles out of the squad recently when they've brought in a couple of youngsters, and Louis Giles is super highly rated as a left back. Maybe that's why they've let him go, because they see Giles and Pacquiao as the two. But it's a weird one, mate. I just hope that we've been clever with the clauses. Dare I say, if we had a director of football, we'd probably have those clauses in there. I'm sure there's a bit of PSR element to it as well, as an academy graduate, and he's out of contract and all that, but still poor decision for me. I'd rather have kept him than some of the more experienced ones, but Ethan says this could be an interesting shout. 4-2-3-1 with Salic as striker, I think you mean Robinson at the 10, but then where'd you put Robertson? Like, for me, Alex Robertson's first name on the team sheet for me. It's just where you play him. I wouldn't break up the Chambers Psyopis partnership for this game. I just wouldn't. And that goes for me. Like, really, in an ideal world, I'd want Ruben in the 10 and Robertson behind him with pace on the wings either side of him, and a out-and-out striker up in front. But I understand the job that Alex Robertson is doing tactically in the 10, and he reads the game so well that I understand that if you need to play both of them at the moment, you probably need to give Ruben a slightly different role. And actually, for this game, I think is probably a good thing. Ethan says, who would I sell? To be honest with you, mate, if a decent offer came in for the majority of the players out of contract for January, I would consider selling them. I would consider offers for the majority. The ones I wouldn't, it's probably easier to say who I wouldn't sell. The ones who are like unsellable for me, Keane Ashford, Alex Robertson, Will Fish, Jesper Darland, Pacquiao, Giles, Ruben, all basically the young players, 20 to 21, 22, who are established. I would keep. A lot of those 13 who are out of contract at the moment, a lot of them were on the brink for me. And I had like a really interesting conversation about Alnwick the other day. Like, if you were asking me to choose, I would keep Alnwick and I would sell Howverth. But Alnwick's out of contract and Howverth isn't. I think we need to sign a new keeper anyway. And then it just all becomes about the ifs and buts and whats. I'd like to see Perry NG find some form, because otherwise I don't know what's happened with him. I don't know what's going on. But he's not the same player that he was when he won Player of the Year 2 years in a row. And I really believe that not just him, but anyone needs to earn their way back into the side when the players in front of them are doing well. Callum Robinson comes back into the side because he's been our best striker all season. When fit, he has been better for the team up front, been our best striker, he's top goal scorer. We as a team look better, so there's no question why he comes back in. At the moment, Keane Ashford, absolutely on form, right attitude, right work rate, so he's the right winger. Anyone else who plays on the wing has got to get past him with their performances. Alex Robertson, again, well, like I said, I think Ruben is better in the 10. Alex Robertson, the job he's doing for the team in the 10 is essential to our midfield being vastly improved. And it allows you, Chambers gives Siopis the opportunity. So Ruben has to force his way into the 10, or Tanner has to force his way in on the wing. Like, that's got to be the same for everyone. And in my opinion, at the moment, Perry NG should not be anywhere near the starting lineup on form. Now, I hope that he starts tomorrow and he has an absolute worldie of a game and reminds us all why he was once considered one of the best right backs in the Championship. And I look stupid. I would love that. Absolutely love it. Atete is... I agree with this. He's not a target man. He's been labelled with it because of his height, but it's not his game. He's better with his feet. Yeah, he's technically very good. Like those goals, you just look at the goals he scored against Blackburn in the Cup last year. Like, technically, he's excellent. So for me, I'd certainly I would have loaned him at the start of this year. He needs to go and get battered about a bit in League One for me. Martin says Tom Davis move needs to play. It's a good move for him. Maybe. Yeah, I think I kind of agree to a certain degree, but then why did we just loan him? Like, why wouldn't we loan him till the summer? And then if he does really well, he can come into the first team next year. Especially when you consider, I think Callum O'Dowd is one of the ones that were left, out of contract, which technically, the way the football clubs run, even though he's been probably our best player, he could not be here next year, and you might need extra bodies at left back. And having a young fullback who's versatile and technically good seems a weird one to me. I get it. Jonathan says sneaky dig at Collins inside. I don't know what I said. Did I? Who knows, mate? I'm surprised that he's still technically a Cardiff City player, to be honest. Alex says, we need to switch on from that first second tomorrow, from that first tackle, get a crowd behind you. 100%, mate. Absolutely 100%. We have to start fast and aggressive. And this is the point I just made. The risk is not worth, for tomorrow's game, it makes zero sense to break up that Siopis-Chambers partnership. It just doesn't make any sense. Jonathan says, Mate, NG, Howworth, Atete, El Ghazi, Kanga, Collins, all out if bids come in. It's difficult to disagree with any of them, mate, to be honest with you. Flipping forgot El Ghazi plays for us. But you've got to have the right attitude and mentality. We're in a relegation battle. Like, you know, we have to have players with the right mentality, but you also need some quality in there as well. Jonathan says, I think NG is both struggling with injury and unhappy. I think he's now on a slope and we're better off selling while he's still worth something. But I was led to believe, mate, they were open to selling him in the summer and no bids come in, and hence why we rushed him back for pre-season. Ethan says, whose contract would you renew? I kind of went through this the other day and trying to think off the top of my head. Alnwick, I'd probably give a new contract to. O'Dowda, I would give Gutas a year with the option of another year, with the understanding that he's there to help Fish, Darland, Dylan Lawler, etc. become first-team championship footballers. I can't remember who else was on the list, mate, off the top of my head. Callum Robinson, my problem with him, like I would like to keep him. He's on so much money, and we have to bring the wage budget down. So I don't know. Maybe they could do something with like reduce his basic wage, but like give him like a big, huge bonus every time he scores or every 5 goals or something. I don't know. Find a way to keep him, but you know, not. Who else is there? Joe Rose. I've already said Joe Rose and Ramsey. I would give them 2 separate contracts. I'd give them a coaching contract, so they're full-time coaches at the club, whether that's in the academy or the first team, and I would give them some sort of pay-as-you-play deal with basic low wage, because I think they both want to stay, but you can't have them on the wages they're at, because the wages versus their availability just doesn't total up. And then when you consider, certainly in Rose's case, probably isn't going to start anyway, can you afford to have someone on big wages who you know isn't going to start most games? It's just kind of one of them, isn't it? Let's have a look. Jeff says, if Salic works for us as a ball-playing tall striker, there's no way you let Atete go. He'll be the perfect replacement for Salic in case of injury. I just think Atete's been miscast as like a target man. I think he's more of a running behind, ball on the deck. No, what I said is, knowing our club, we'd let O'Dowda, like we wouldn't renew his contract, but then we've let a left back go. So it just makes no sense, like whatsoever. So I would have loaned him, but it all depends on if they've put those clauses in for like sell on. Zed says, NG, our best player last year. Absolutely disagree with that, mate. He was good till about Christmas, and then he gradually has been on a downward slope since then. Had a couple of good games here and there, but generally I thought his form really dipped. But look, it's all opinions, mate, isn't it? I love Perry NG. He's my favourite player for a while. I just think I think he should have to earn his place back in that starting 11. But he just hasn't quite been at it. Hasn't quite been going for him. It is difficult when you come back into quite a poor team and you've been injured and stuff like that. Top goal scorer, yeah, he was our top goal scorer last year. Perry, it shows how little goals we scored in the bullet, though, doesn't it? Sue says Isaac to get some under 21s action. Sue, yeah, I would think so. I think he could be massive for us in the latter part of the season as well. If he hits the ground running and he's able to get back up to that fitness, he could be really dangerous. My worry is such a serious injury that he had to his knee that you worry that he's lost a yard of pace or something like that just because of the nature of the injury. Could be vital though, and especially the way the system and the way we set up having another option similar to Callum Robinson who will press and run in behind is a great option. Martin says, think retention will be dependent on what league we're playing in. 100% it is. But also I believe that we've got to get the wage budget down, mate. We're the 5th highest wage budget in the championship. Look at some of the size of the clubs in the championship, and we are the 5th highest wage budget. That is insane. Rhys said, it's one of those. Rhys said, I've told them which players I want to keep. The club might be planning on replacing him in the summer, so ignoring his choices of who to keep. Yeah, mate. It's just one of them, isn't it? Laughable from the club from top to bottom. Got an interim manager, 13 players out of contract. So who's making the decision? Because, of course, it's got to be financially, like that side of it's got to come into it and getting the wage bill down. But there's also got to be like a footballing decision of which players do you want to retain. And who's making that decision? The manager who could leave in the summer? The board who've got no football knowledge between them? Like, it's a tricky one, man. Difficult to know, isn't it? Martin says, I'd love to see a midfield of Chambers, Robertson and Colwell. We're not in a position to take that risk, especially without a proven goal scorer up front. Yeah, I mean, if Salic hits the ground running and scores a couple of goals, I agree with you. That would be a midfield and a half. And I think for certain games, you could probably go Siopis, Robertson, Colwell. There's certain games you can switch it up a bit. But tomorrow is obviously a game for Chambers and Siopis. And like I said, my personal preference, I'd play Ruben off the left in a complete free role and let him wander and see if they pick him up, because they do not fancy him. They couldn't cope with him in the last game when he came on. And I think they will be happy if Ruben Colwell's on the bench, personally. Zed says, feeling nervous for tomorrow. Hope the boys get stuck in from the first minute, take the lead first. Yeah, I do think, mate, but Swansea have been not great this year. And I just think if you could start fast, get an early goal, it'd be nice, wouldn't it, if we could have another comfortable home victory like we had last year. But yeah, I'm with like you, mate. Nervous, tense, anxious, and it's a horrible game. It's like one of them you love but you hate, you know. Graham says it's amazing that other players are not chipping in with goals. Yeah, it's bizarre, mate, isn't it? But I do think part of that is certainly under Buller, we just created so little chances. Like, so little chances. And it used to bemuse me when he'd come out and speak after the game and go, oh, we created this. And it's like, no, we created nothing. Jonathan says the players have let Rhys down a lot. I think they owe him a top performance tomorrow to help him through his rough time he's having. I agree with you, mate. The players have let him down massively. Cardiff City 23 says, what do you think about the club only now opening block 117? It's just typical of Cardiff City Football Club, mate, isn't it? Like, yeah, it's just top to bottom, behind the times, just poor. Fact Steve says, very chilled about tomorrow. Speak to some Jacks in the week, they don't fancy it. Well, hopefully their team don't fancy it, mate. They got a lot of injuries to some key players, especially in defensive areas, which is, again, why I'm going with like that Ruben, Robertson, Ashford behind Robinson, and then bringing Salic and Tanner off the bench. Got to keep our heads. Holton says, any more transfer rumours? There's not a lot at the moment. I think a lot of it's been focused on the game. Did hear that we were trying to get a loan forward in before the game tomorrow, but obviously that didn't happen. I think he's Palestinian Danish, isn't he? Salic, because I read an article about him linking him to Palestine. I think he qualifies for. He's Danish technically, I think. Well, not technically. I think he's Danish, but I think he qualifies for Palestine. Yeah, Danish. I thought he was. Can you imagine that, Jeff? Oh, I misread that then. I thought you said that he was making the decision on the out-contract players, and I was like, Jesus. But you were referring to... do you know what, Ethan? In regards to Ricky J. Jones, the more I hear about it, the more I think about it, I think that we might have used him a bit, because it made no sense to me why Omar Rhys spoke about him publicly after we'd had a bid turned down and the player had indicated that he wasn't really interested in coming until the summer. So it didn't make any sense to me why we spoke about it publicly. But what it did do is, with Salic, nobody knew until the lunchtime of was it Tuesday? A little nod, like sort of lunchtime, early afternoon. But I was like, there was nothing before that. And we all know, like, Cardiff got like leaky leaks everywhere. So they did that in the summer. In fairness to them, their transfer business was quite clever. And people forget, like, if Kanga had worked out, which I know is a big if, and it's like if my auntie had the deck should be my granddad, and all that sort of stuff. I get it. But like, if he had worked out, I could think you could say that our window in summer was a good transfer window. ATEC says, will you be attending the walk site? I won't be walking it, mate. I can't walk that far. So I got a surgically repaired back. But I'll be around in Canton and stuff. Come say hello. But we shall see. Jonathan says, can you imagine trying to lowball Peterborough as a smokescreen, but it backfired and they've accepted the bid? To be honest with you, mate, like, Peterborough have got 3 players that I would really, really like. And Ricky J. Jones is the 3rd on that list. Poku and the midfielders, whose name I always forget. All 3 of them would make our team better. They're good. So, yeah, it's one of them. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's been a massive pleasure. Enjoyed your company this evening ahead of the big game tomorrow. I am excited but nervous. Oh, the one thing I didn't do, key player for Cardiff City is, for me, will be Siopis, because he will set the tone. And my prediction for the game is that Cardiff City will be victorious by 7-0. Nah, I think it'll be 2-0 to Cardiff City. Come on, the Bluebirds!